Hey everyone, it's Daniel. Welcome to my channel, Slow Haste, where we talk about electronic music hardware, synths, and the creative process. I'm going to talk to you today about the top 5 reasons why the Digitakt has slowly become my favorite all-in-one groovebox. I didn't have anything planned for this week, but I was kind of messing around with a new song, and everything kind of came together really quickly in a way that I think was only really possible on a device like this. So to start off, I'm just going to play the tune for you, and then we can get into the logistics of it. I will, as always, include chapter markers below, so feel free to skip around. But yeah, I encourage you to stick around for the whole video. I hope you learned something useful. Okay, so that was a little tune that I've been working on this week. I hope you enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun creating it, and it was one of those things that kind of just came together haphazardly when I sat down and was feeling especially inspired. So I want to talk you through how I kind of made that in the context of these things that really have been standing out to me about the Digitakt. So first I want to talk to you about what is referred to as the Elektron Workflow. And you may have heard this thrown around a bit if you're kind of like lurking or trying to learn about Elektron devices. And if you are a veteran, you're probably very familiar with the Elektron Workflow. At its most basic form, that phrase kind of just refers to the method of building patterns and sequences. At the heart of it is the sequencer, and how powerful the sequencer is, in particular with the implementation of trig conditions and parameter locks. Admittedly, I don't tend to use trig conditions too much, but I parameter lock the crap out of most things, especially my percussion. So I'm going to show you, I'll play you just the percussion track on that first pattern to start. So if I show you any of the tracks, you can see that, for example, the kick is parameter locked here. So like there are these short steps that just kind of sound like little, short decay, little filler kicks. And then the main kicks are kind of these boomier hits to kind of accent, those beats that I want to have a lot of emphasis. And you do that just by holding a key and editing the parameter as such. I do also really like the implementation of live recording. So the greenish yellow backlit keys indicates that there is, recorded parameters that were live recorded into the step. And even though there's not a step on there, it indicates that there's a value or a transition of one of these parameters being adjusted. So you can see how the values adjust between step 3 and 7 on this sort of like auxiliary percussion track. I will play that track for you by itself so you can kind of see how that goes. So it's really subtle, but you can see how those sort of like fuzzy hi-hat hits, I kind of do the same thing where I adjust the length or the volume of those hits per step to give that percussion section a more human feel. So yeah, it's really fun and easy to parameter lock. In addition to specifically parameter locking, the other thing about the Elektron workflow that I love is just the immediacy of building patterns and copying and pasting. And I'll again exhibit with the percussion section. And then we'll build up to the melodic components as I tend to do. But the second pattern was created just by copying and pasting the first pattern and then going into the grid view for each instrument and slightly varying each sound and adding a few steps here and there. So here is the build from the first pattern to the second pattern with just the percussion. On to pattern 2. Right, so it's a little more amped up, a little more high energy. So you can hear clearly with like the hi-hat track, I just added, I kind of made it 16th notes instead of that more laid back groove. I changed the snare sounds on 2 and 3 and 4. So all of these were kind of like light, puffy, snare-ish accent sounds. None of them were really like a big snare hit. But I kind of changed this to like a digital snare sound. And I want to play these 3 tracks for you just to hear the transition of those 3 sonically. So yeah, all I really did was I copied and pasted the whole pattern and then just changed the sample that's being used for each of these, and it kind of recontextualizes the beat into something that's a little more high energy, something that's a little more driving. And I think that's something that's really neat that you can do. Some people might not like that it is like copy and pasty, but it makes it so easy to develop an idea once you have your foundations down. So before I move on to some of the other quick things that I really like about the Digitakt, I do want to talk about the samples that I've used for my melodic components. The main sample that it starts off with is, you guessed it, a blank form sample from Tape's 4, I think. Oops, we're in the wrong track. It is, oh no, it's from Tape's 3, but it's this. The sample's pretty long, but I just use that first half. And rarely do I just kind of like use the whole sample, but I was scrolling through samples to add to my project when I was working on this. And I just loved the groove that was behind this. And I actually started off with that sample and built all the drums and stuff around it. So I used that as a foundation, knowing that I was going to like add a chord to contextualize it underneath, which ended up being this chord. So it's this is an Arturia Microfreak sample that I made. And I just reversed the last little bit of the sample to capture a single chord. And together, these two sound like this. And in the second pattern, I did the same thing with the copy and paste, and I did some heavy parameter locking on this sample. And as you can see, I used a different chunk of it, still in reverse, to get a totally different chord progression, all from the same sample. So you can hear how I stole different parts to get some different inversions of that main chord, which I thought was really cool. It's really cool to be able to use a very dense kind of pad sample and just go and pick and choose little parts and pieces and just put them on different trigs. Still recovering from my kitchen injury from last week, by the way. I'm doing okay, though. Don't you worry. Anyways, and then, of course, how could I not talk about Sample 8? This is a single note just taken from another Blank Forms sample pack, and I mean, you know the melody. I did a little bit of stealing like an artist here, so. And I just kind of played that melody in the chromatic tracking mode. And then for the second pattern, I just changed up the melody and played in some arpeggios on this little keyboard, which was actually a lot of fun and definitely took some trial and error to get the playing right, but here it is. And you can hear that dancing around the stereo field quite a bit. I got kind of aggressive with it. And it's pretty choppy the way I did it, but I think it sounds cool in the context of everything else. So yeah, I guess that's an additional bonus item that I love about the Digitakt is the ability to immediately synthesize ideas from so many different sources, from sample packs from a different artist, from an external synthesizer, from a slight melodic run from an old game. Casper, it's just a squirrel. Shh, shh, shh. Kids these days, I tell ya. And being able to so easily synthesize those elements together with a simple beat that you can throw together in the course of 20 to 30 minutes. I think I got that first pattern down pat and then revisited it the next day to create the second pattern. I'm sorry, but this is hilarious. The dog is very aggressively squirrel watching from my studio window, and she won't shut up, but it's kind of cute, right? Anyways, I don't want this one to run too long, so quickly let me talk about another one of these features that I really love is the Control All feature. So if you're not familiar, you just hold track, and then you turn any knob, adjust any parameter, and it adjusts all of the samples to follow whatever you tell it to do. And then you end up with this wacky sounding thing, and you might be asking, how do you get back to your default state? Well, you hold function and hit no to reload pattern. There you go. And you can mess around with so much. Yeah, endless possibilities. Super fun performance trick. Just be careful not to accidentally hit function and yes, because then you'll save the messed up pattern that you just ended up on. So it can be kind of easy to slip up, but as long as you just save your work beforehand, you can just reload the project and it's all good. So another reason the Digitakt has very rapidly risen to tie for the top spot of my all-in-one groovebox is take a wild guess at what it's tied with. But it's just the fact that there's so much continued support from the community in general, people making sample packs and stuff, and also from Elektron themselves. They recently released firmware 1.3, which included a pretty small set of actually really significant features. One that I'll focus on is the addition of a second filter page and different filter modes. So on this main chord sample, I just have a low pass filter, but I've adjusted the bass and the width of the filter. So it's just a further level of control that allows you to like notch that filter in. And I'll show you as an example for this sample. They added a parametric EQ with 5 different shapes. So there's nothing on it. And there's that EQ curve applied with a bit of the width turned down to warm it up a little bit. So the fact that you can really, really fine tune these components, and this is just a feature that recently came up, it adds a lot of value and power to a machine like this in terms of just doing a majority of your mixing right on the device. You can fine tune things to your heart's content to, I would say, a pretty finely produced product on the Digitakt. before exporting it to a DAW for like final mastering. So I think that adds a lot of value to the Digitakt. And I wonder what other firmware updates will include in the future, if there are any. So yeah, those are some of my favorite things about the Digitakt. Again, to summarize, the Elektron Workflow, parameter locking in particular, the fact that you can really easily synthesize multiple sources into one cohesive piece that are kind of brought together and glued together by that Elektron Workflow, and general continued support from both the public and Elektron communities really make this a device worth having. And it has been a huge source of inspiration over the past 9 or so months for me. It's pretty much the reason I started this whole channel. So I have that to owe it. And it's just been an outstanding amount of fun and experience getting to know this device. I also wanted to mention that I'm going to be offering Digitakt lessons available through my Patreon page. At the last couple of tiers include perks that you can personalize to learn about electronic music, about different pieces of hardware or concepts. So if you're interested in that, jump over to my Patreon page. The link is in my bio, and I hope you might find something of value over there. Anyways, that is it for today's video. I just wanted to show you that jam that I've been working on this week and kind of show you how it kind of implies all of these features and facets of the Digitakt that have been really fun to explore over the past year or so. As always, thank you so much for joining, and I hope to see you in the next one. Take care.